The South African Society of Bank Officials, SASBO, says it's going ahead with a massive strike this Friday. The union, which is the biggest financial union in the country, says it will ensure ATMs and banking operations are not functional. Workers are protesting against the retrenchment of staff and the digitization of banking systems. A number of local banks have closed branches around the country as a result of digitization. Lenders are also cutting jobs as they seek ways to lower costs and contend with slow economic growth. Banks are also facing fresh competition from branchless digital entrants such as Time Bank and Discovery Bank. Job cuts in the sector will add to the country's unemployment rate of 29%, the highest in more than a decade. That's an interesting one that we promised to follow up for you. For more on this story, actually, now we're joined on the line by the South African Society of Bank Officials General Secretary Joe Kokela. Mr. Kokela, very good morning and thanks for joining us. Where is the strike taking place and where?
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us on your studios. The strike will be on the 27th of September. In Gauteng, it will start in Kosatu House in Jorrison Street down to Simon Street at the Bank City, where the memorandum will be handed over to the captains of the banks. And then there will also have another 4 that will take place in Durban, where they'll be converging at the King Dinizulu Park up to until to the City Hall. There will also be having another one that will be taking at Cape Town. Cape Town, they'll convert it to the Cape Town CBD next to Standard Bank. And they will be going almost from Standard Bank, Nedbank, and FNB and Capitec, where they will be handing over these memorandums. Then the other one will take place in Bloemfontein, where people will be converging into Charlotte Maxeke Street, where they will be marching also to next to the big square there, which is called Brandbach, a mall where they will be handing over memorandums. Then the other one will be in PE. So all the strikes are scheduled to start at 10, and they will be finishing around 2:30 on the day. So it is a national strike. It is a national shutdown. So this is what we are anticipating as SASBO.
So based on what you're saying, you pretty much got the whole country covered, really. But the strength of any strike is in the numbers. How much support have you got from your members?
Look, we're talking of 73,000 strong members of SASBO, which up to date, those are members in good standing. And I must say that when we look at the numbers, already in Gauteng, we are sure of plus minus 10 to 20,000 members that there will be on the streets on the day of the march. And then we are also being assured by areas like Cape Town, where they're expecting almost 5,000 members, and also Durban, that is expecting almost the same number. And I think that the lowest that they will have is around 3,000, which will be Port Elizabeth. So all in all, if you ask me, we're looking at between 45 to 50,000 members that there will be, that they've confirmed that they will be marching on the 27th of September.
So in order to get to a strike, you need to have gotten through some motions with the other party. Has SASBO sat down with the banks to ask how the institutions were planning to deal with the effects of the 4th Industrial Revolution on employees, on workers?
Look, the motion that we got into, it was the one that is promulgated by Section 189 of the Labour Relations Act. So Section 189, it speaks about the intention to retrench. If the organization realizes that they are intending to retrench people, then they have to evoke Section 189. And it also speaks about the occupational requirements. So majority speak about occupational requirements, and then the meeting has to be between the employer and the employee representative, which in this regard is SASBO. So much as we've met with the banks, there was no consensus that we really arrived at. Because of it even speaks about the consensus seeking. So much as there's no consensus that we've really agreed on, So it means that we have reached an impasse. So much as we've reached an impasse, we've even started to say to the banks, looking at Section 189, and you guys are talking of operational requirements, we don't believe that you consulted us as far as operational requirements because of, according to SASBO, we believe that you can still be able to run those branches, especially the ones those have closed 91 plus branches. We said to them, you can run with over-complement and make sure that we look at natural attrition. But the banks never wanted to budge into that. And the other thing is, much as we're talking about consensus seeking, we started to realize that when we were talking to this bank, when they were saying to us that it's all because of the operational requirements, we realized that it was not about operational requirements, it was corporate greed. Because of how do you justify a CEO who gets 198 million as a bonus alone? How to justify a CEO who gets 258,000 per day as his salary? So you can see it has nothing to do with operational requirements. It has nothing to do with the fourth industrial revolution, but it's all about corporate greed. Because of one thing that we've done as SASBO is to say, let's start to talk about how do we define the future world of work. So when we started talking about the future world of work, I can tell you now to say none of the institutions, none of the banks in South Africa knows exactly what is the requirements of the fourth industrial revolution, especially when it comes to the future world of work. So that is our problem, to say if you don't know yourself, you cannot start now to want to cut the jobs because of yourself. You don't understand what does the future world of work entails. So that is why we are going on a strike, and that is why we've even decided as SASBO to say up to until we start sitting down with the employer, where we'll start to look at developing a program that will speak to how do we reskill our people, how do we upskill, how do we multi-skill, how do we outskill our people so that we can create employability to this country to cap the 29% unemployment rate that is happening. But we realize that the banks are not keen to come so that we can establish a program between ourselves and the government. It has to be included into this.
So let's unpack the two issues of contention here. The one is retrenchments, which you've spoken about just now, and how we can find creative ways to reskill people and move them around in the banking space. The issue about digitization, it's a global issue. We need very creative, extremely creative minds to think about how to find ways, as you say, that you're already engaging the issues such as the future of work. How are you going to get away from this one? Already, a sizable chunk of the society never has to step into a bank to do banking.
Look, we don't believe as SASBO that is true. That is not true because of you look at the LSM, the living standard measurements. LSM 1.4, those are the poor, and the poor people are the people who are spending their times into the banks. And we can tell you now that, in fact, the banks are chasing people out of their branches to say when people want to do a deposit, when people want to do inquiries, these poor people are being chased to go and transact at the ATMs, and most of them are not even aware and are not even able to transact at the ATMs because of them being used to transact inside the bank. So that's the challenge. And the second challenge that we're coming up with, which we're saying we don't believe is totally true. The guy that is a small business at the corner selling, those guys, they vote coins. Those ATMs, they don't have a facility where coins can be deposited. So it's telling you that the bank going to the future is no longer going to be the banks that are going to cater for the poor, but the banks that are geared to make sure that they will cater for the rich. So that is our challenge. So we don't really buy to this notion of saying people have migrated to the digital and whatever. Yes, people have migrated, but we still believe that 65 to 70% of people in South Africa are still preferring to go to a brick and mortar bank where they can do the transaction safely. Right now, we've got something that we call cybersecurity. These banks are not really protected as far as cyber is concerned because of the so many. There was a report that was issued to say almost 50 billion transactions, fraudulent transactions have happened through the cyberspace. So we are not ready as a country to get into that space.
What you're raising is quite important because it speaks to that conversation we're always having in the country about an unequal society. So this is a direct impact and a direct story we can relate to.
Exactly. Because of it means that my mother could no longer transact. Because of it, my mother cannot have a phone of the art. It means that if you don't have that kind of a phone, and then it means that you'll never be able to transact. So now it's like we are marginalizing the poor people to say they can no longer do banking in this country.
What will be the impact on Friday when you go on that strike?
Look, the impact of what is going to happen is that there will never be activities that will take place on Friday. Unfortunately, people will not be able to transact because of if the bank they think that they've got the ATMs, they've got the telephone, banking and all these things. We want to demonstrate to the banks to say there's nothing that can happen about us as workers without us because of those lines that the banks are using. Those are the lines that really have been operated by our own people. So our people will be out and we'll make sure that the economy, just for that day, it will stand still so that the banks can open up their minds and come to the party.
Are you not going to affect the very people that you're hoping to protect here? On the one hand, you're protecting your members, but you say that you want to create a space where the poor are able to be banked.
The thing, ma'am, it's no pain, no gain. Unfortunately, sometimes, somehow in life, you have to compromise. You have to sacrifice some of the things in order for you to be able to get the massive of what you're looking for. So the country as a whole and our members, unfortunately, at this stage, they have to bear with us because of if we don't beat the bullet, the problem will become that the banks will think that what they're doing is correct and they will continue to make sure that people are losing their jobs. So it will be only for temporary, but you know that going forward, we have made a mark and we'll make sure that the jobs will be saved and we'll make sure that everybody in this country, especially in the banking sector, they'll still be having their jobs.
Joe, we keep talking about the retrenchment story. Give us a sense. You on the ground and you're closer to the story. How bad is it? How bad is the situation?
Look, the situation is bad. I must say that when you go to the branches, as I've said, that the banks have now encouraged our members to migrate people, forcefully so, to go out and do their transactions. And that alone, we've seen the ATM frauds, escalating. We've seen our elders being robbed at the ATMs. And when they go inside the bank, there's no one who seems to be listening to them because of no one takes responsibilities of what has happened out there. We've seen monies being lost into the transactions of ordinary citizens. There is another scam that is happening where every time when you go to account, it might have happened to you also as a South African, where every month there is a 59 rand or 49 rand, whatever, that is being deducted out of your account, and you don't even know who are the people. If you go to the bank and say, there is this transaction that has happened, the bank will say to you, you can only reverse this thing, but you cannot be able to close it permanently. And isn't it that when they are reversing this transaction, they are also charging you a reversal transaction, and the banks are making money? That is a scam of a digitalization.
And in terms of job losses?
In terms of job losses, ma'am, look, we are talking of plus minus 10,000 people that might lose their jobs this year only in the financial institution because of already we've got 1,800 people that have exited the system in Standard Bank. We've got 1,500 people that are about to exit. Some of them are already out of the system. And Nedbank is looking at least exiting 3,000 people. When and how, nobody knows. We've even taken them to court to interdict them into what they're doing. They are looking at ABSA. ABSA has, affected almost 838 people, and who says they're not continuing? They're still continuing consulting to say they still want to reduce headcount. So when you look at the whole thing, we are going to have plus minus 10,000 jobs that will be gone in this country. We have 10,000 people that will be without a job. We take down 10,000, you multiply by 4, by 7, because of we live in black tax. You see how many other souls are going to be affected by this unemployment rate.
I was reading an article in a business publication the other day saying that when it comes to banking, because people need to the service of banking, the profits will continue to go up, but the need for actual people there will go down, which means the CEOs, a concern you mentioned earlier, will continue to milk it. How are you having this conversation with CEOs?
Look, unfortunately, all along at SASBO, we never had that kind of discussion with the CEOs. And because of all along, banking was one of the safest places for anyone to be in. We've never heard of banks really retrenching. But now, because of digitalization, it's all realized that now CEOs looking at how are they going to maximize the profit of the banks, and how are they also going to maximize their greed, of taking all these other monies. So they resort to look at the vulnerable, of which the vulnerable are the workers. So all that we are asking for, and which we are going to call for as SASBO, is to say we'll need government intervention now, that the CEO salaries and their bonuses, they have to be regulated, because of the way they've been done. These CEOs are running away with murder.
All right, so we've had a long conversation, and some people might have missed out on the detail at the beginning. Tell us once again, when is the strike, where, who's participating, and the impacts in one line?
Strike is happening on the 27th, nationwide, 5 provinces, and the participants will be all the financial workers in this country, as well as those unions that they are affiliated to COSATU, that they are going to give us support. March will be starting at 10 o'clock in all areas. We'll go up to until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Friday.
Thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Joe Kokela is the General Secretary of the South African Society of Bank Officials. I imagine it's a story that we'll be talking about for the rest of the week, especially in relation to how the banks are responding to this eventuality.